Dear listeners, imagine this. A little boy standing alone, trembling in the middle of a dense, eerie jungle. His clothes are soaked by the relentless rain. His eyes swollen from crying, and his lips trembling, unable to speak. Behind him, footsteps come to a sudden stop. Not to help him, but to leave him. In front of him, only darkness. The forest howls with the cries of unseen creatures. He has just been abandoned by the one adult who should have protected him. Left alone. In the cold. In a wild place he doesn't know. What could a child like him have done to deserve such cruelty? But before we get into the story, don't forget to support this channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to bring you more amazing stories. And thank you so much to everyone who has already shown their love. You're an important part of this journey. Also, drop your city in the comments. Let us know where you're listening from, so we can see how far our stories have reached. Now let's get into the story. His name is Bayou, just 10 years old. He's thin, quiet, and tired-looking. His voice is soft and his smile almost never seen. Bayou lived in a small village on the edge of the Sumatran jungle with his father, Sino, and his stepmother, Ratna. Life used to be warm. His mother, a simple woman full of love, would hug him every morning and kiss his forehead every night before bed. But everything changed when she passed away from a high fever 2 years ago. That day, Bayou lost more than just a mother. He lost the light in his home. His father, broken and grieving, was easily charmed by sweet words. He remarried. The woman was Ratna, a beautiful lady from the neighboring village who wore a smile that masked something cold beneath. From the moment she entered the house, Bayou sensed the shift. His meals became smaller, his clothes older, and when his father wasn't home, Bayou became the target of her rage. "You cursed child! Look at this mess! You're nothing but bad luck!" Ratna would scream, hitting or pulling his hair, sometimes even pouring cold water over his head. What hurt most was that his father never knew. Every night Ratna would act like the victim, crying in Sino's arms, telling him lies, that Bayou was difficult, disobedient, and once even cursed her. Exhausted from working long hours in the field, Sino would just nod, never once asking Bayou the truth. Then came that stormy night, the night that changed everything. Rain poured violently from the sky. The wind slammed into rooftops. Thunder cracked like the heavens were breaking. Sino lay in bed with a high fever, shivering. Bayou tried his best to care for him, placing wet cloths on his forehead, fetching warm water. But Ratna suddenly packed a small bag and grabbed Bayou by the wrist. "Come. We're going to the jungle. We need to find cinnamon leaves for your father's medicine." Bayou followed. Hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, she meant well this time. They walked deep into the forest. Rain soaked their skin. Mud pulled at their steps. The trees towered above them like silent judges. Then Ratna stopped. "Wait here. I'll get the leaves." "Don't go anywhere," she said coldly. Then she turned and disappeared into the trees. Bayou waited. And waited. The rain grew heavier. The thunder louder. "Mom! Where are you?" he called. No answer. Bayou's heart pounded. He walked a little, searching. "Mom! Please come back." But she was gone. Bayou collapsed near the roots of a giant tree. The wet earth clung to his face. His body trembled, not just from the cold, but from the realization. He had been left behind. Abandoned. By someone he still called Mom. That night felt endless. He curled under the roots, his stomach empty, his heart hollow. Morning came, but there was no comfort in the light. He was too weak to walk far. He tried to eat leaves and unripe berries, but nothing eased his hunger. Days passed, each moment a struggle. His breath grew shallow. He tripped and fell near a slope. Sharp branches cut his arms. Blood trickled from his forehead. His body, small and exhausted, lay still. And then, from the bushes nearby, a figure emerged. Massive, striking. Its golden eyes gleamed in the shadows. Wet fur clung to its powerful body. Stripes as sharp as flames in the mist. A Sumatran tiger. Rare, majestic, deadly. But you couldn't move. He lay frozen, watching. The tiger stepped closer. Bayu closed his eyes. His breath was shallow, his body weak, and his mind on the verge of giving up. The tiger was now only a few steps away. Its heavy footsteps pressed into the wet leaves. Bayu could smell the earth clinging to the creature's fur. He was certain this was the end. There was nowhere to run. No one left to hope for. But the tiger didn't pounce. It didn't growl. It didn't bare its fangs. Just stood there, watching him, with sharp eyes, but not filled with rage. There was something else in its gaze. Curiosity. Slowly the tiger stepped closer. It sniffed the blood trickling from Bayu's forehead, then gently licked the wound with its coarse tongue. Bayu winced softly, not out of fear, but from the sting of the wound. The tiger then lay down beside him. Not to dominate, not to hunt, but to guard him. Time passed slowly. The rain had stopped, but the ground remained slick and cold. Bayu couldn't move. But his fear was fading, replaced by wonder. Why hadn't this tiger eaten him? Why did it stay? As night fell again, the tiger curled beside him, sharing its warmth with the shivering boy. Bayu fell asleep from exhaustion, and when he opened his eyes the next morning, the tiger was still there, perched on a large stone, watching over him. Bayu slowly sat up, though his body ached. The tiger approached and lowered its head. Without thinking, Bayu reached out and touched it. Its fur was damp and coarse, but warm. For the first time since being abandoned, Bayu didn't feel alone. The days that followed, they never left each other's side. Bayu named the tiger Raja, the king, because of the way it moved and the fire in its golden eyes. Raja wasn't just a friend. He was a protector, a guardian. And in the harsh solitude of the jungle, Raja became the only family Bayu had left. They hunted together. Not that Bayu hunted. Raja would chase down small animals and leave them nearby. Bayu learned to find safe fruit, recognize bird calls, track the wind, and read signs of danger from cracking branches or sudden silence in the woods. What once was a terrifying jungle now felt like home. And Raja was always there. But peace never lasts forever. One afternoon, while Bayu and Raja were resting near a stream, they heard something unfamiliar. The distant rumble of engines. And shouting. Bayu turned toward the sound. Raja stood up instantly. Ears alert. Breathing fast. They moved slowly toward the noise. From behind a bush, Bayu saw a scene that made his heart race. A group of men, adults, carrying rifles, hunting dogs at their side, dressed in green and black. Cold expressions. Hunters. If there's really a tiger around here, we catch it alive. The sanctuary will pay a fortune, one man yelled. Bayu held his breath. He knew who they were after. Raja, his friend, his only family. He couldn't let them find him. They rushed back to their shelter. That night Bayu couldn't sleep. He curled up beside Raja inside the cave they had made home. Raja was lying down but restless. His tail kept twitching. His glowing eyes stared outward. They both knew danger was closing in. The next morning, gunshots echoed in the distance. Men shouted. Dogs barked. Raja stood. His muscles tightened. He growled low. Bayu grabbed his fur, locking eyes with him. We have to leave this place, Raja. They'll kill you. But where could they go? This was the jungle. And Raja was part of it. Bayu couldn't drag a tiger out of the forest. All they could do was hide. Hope the men would give up. But deep down Bayu knew. A tiger like Raja couldn't stay hidden forever. That night, as they prepared to sleep, Raja suddenly stood. He looked at Bayu with a long, heavy stare. As if he knew. As if he was saying that tonight was different. That tomorrow, nothing would be the same. And he was right. At dawn, the barking drew nearer. The sound of chains and boots echoed. Bayu bit his lip. Tears streamed down his face. Raja, don't go out there. Please don't. But Raja only looked at him softly. He licked Bayu's cheek once, and then walked out of the cave, head held high, shoulders proud, like a true king walking toward his fate. Bayu chased after him, grabbing at his tail, trying to hold him back. But he was just a small boy. He couldn't stop him. All he could do was scream, cry out his name, and watch as the tiger disappeared into the morning mist, toward the sound of hunters drawing near. Bayu ran as fast as he could, following the faint tracks Raja had left behind. The mist was thick that morning, veiling the jungle in a silence that felt unnatural. Sharp branches tore at his legs. Thorns pierced his bare feet. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. His heart knew. Raja was walking into danger. Then, through the fog, Bayu saw it. Small clearing. 3 men with rifles. 2 hunting dogs barking wildly. And in the middle of it all, stood Raja. The tiger stood tall, unmoving. His golden eyes locked on the men in green. The dogs snarled, lunged forward, and Raja responded. With a thunderous growl, he leapt lightning quick, striking one dog down with a paw, sending the other flying with his powerful jaws. But then, it happened. A trap, hidden beneath the leaves, snapped around Raja's leg. A thick steel cable yanked tight, pulling him down. Raja roared in pain, struggling, dragging the chain with him. One of the men raised a rifle. "Don't shoot. We need him alive," shouted another. A dart flew. It hit Raja's chest. The tiger flinched. His roars grew weaker. His limbs slowed. And then, he collapsed. Bayu froze behind a massive root, eyes wide, mouth trembling. He wanted to scream, to run to his friend, to claw at the men and rip the chain apart. But he couldn't. He was just a child. And if they saw him, they would take him too. Raja was still breathing, but barely. They wrapped his limbs in metal chains and dragged him across the ground. His great body left a trail of blood on the dirt. The men cheered. "We got ourselves a fortune right here. Let's move." Bayu followed from the shadows, his heart breaking with every step. They took Raja far beyond the jungle's edge, toward the human world, a world of greed and cages. That night, Bayu returned to the cave where they used to sleep. He sat in the dark, arms wrapped around his knees, trying to recall the sound of Raja's breathing beside him. But there was only silence now, heavy and cruel. In the days that followed, Bayu wandered the forest alone, but not aimlessly. He was looking, watching, learning. He followed the trash trails of the hunters, listened to their voices echoing through the forest. He learned to sneak past their paths, to read their movements, to survive without being seen. His body was growing weaker, scratches, hunger, exhaustion. But he didn't care. He had one goal. And then he found it. Compound. Hidden behind rusted metal walls. Floodlights beaming into the sky. Barking dogs. Armed men patrolling. And in the middle, a cage. A massive steel cage. And inside it, Vraja. Bayu climbed a tree nearby, hiding in the leaves, heart pounding. Through the bars he saw the tiger. Bruised. Dirty. Weak. But alive. Raja looked up as if sensing him. Their eyes met. Bayu pressed his hand to his chest, tears falling. You're still alive. You waited for me. Raja slowly rose to his feet. He walked to the bars, lowered his head. Bayu could feel it. Raja recognized him. But then a voice. Tomorrow we ship this beast overseas, said a man in uniform walking near the cage. The buyer already transferred half the payment. $500 million. That tiger's gonna make us rich. Bayu held his breath. $500 million. Selling Raja. He's not a prize. He's not a trophy. He's family. That night Bayu didn't sleep. He sat in the tree, his small body shaking in the wind, eyes fixed on the cage. He was just a boy. No weapons. No tools. No one to help him. But he had something else. Love. And love, when it burns deep enough, becomes a fire that no wall, no chain, no trap could ever contain. That night, Bayu carefully climbed down from the tree. Heavy clouds hung above, and the cold crept deep into his bones. But he didn't flinch. All he knew was that tonight, he had to do something. He crept along the rusted fence, crouched behind thick bushes, then climbed a stack of old wood beside the quiet building. Through a crack in the wall he peeked inside. The room was dimly lit, a weak bulb swinging from the ceiling. A man lay snoring on a torn mattress, clutching a bottle of liquor. On the wooden table near him hung a key. Bayu clenched his jaw. His heart thundered, but his steps were light. He waited still until the man's breathing grew deep and steady. Then he slipped through the slightly open door. The room reeked of alcohol and stale tobacco. Bayu held his breath and stepped toward the table. His fingers trembled as he reached for the key hanging from a rusty nail. Creak from the floorboard. The man shifted. His arm nearly brushed Bayu's foot. But then, he rolled over and kept snoring. Bayu grabbed the key, slipped out of the room and rushed toward the cage. There Raja. The tiger was still alive though weak. His eyes still glowed faintly in the shadows. He lifted his head as Bayu approached, like he had been waiting. Bayu slid the key into the padlock. Once. 3 times. It didn't fit. Sweat dripped from his brow. And then click. Opened. He pulled the cage door slowly. The rusted metal screeched. Raja stood, staggering slightly. His body bruised and battered. Bayu wrapped his arms around the tiger's neck, sobbing softly. Let's go home. But before they could take a step. Who's there? Flashlight flared. Dogs barked. Boots thundered. Bayu had no time to think. He climbed onto Raja's back. The tiger roared and sprinted forward, bursting through a weak section of the fence. Gunshots rang out. Bullets slammed into the ground beside them. They fled into the night. Behind them chaos. Ahead, only darkness and freedom. Raja kept running though he stumbled. Bayu held on tightly, burying his face in Raja's fur. As dawn broke, they reached a hill at the edge of the forest. Raja staggered, then collapsed into the wet grass. Raja! Bayu cried, falling beside him. Blood soaked the tiger's side. His breathing was shallow. Bayu sobbed, pressing his face against Raja's neck. Please don't leave me. You're all I have. Raja looked at him, calm, peaceful, as if to say, I've done all I can. I don't want you to go, Bayu whispered, shaking. You're my only family. But Raja remained still. His breath slowed. Softer, until they stopped. Bayu screamed. The sound echoed across the silent hilltop. He clung to the still body, tears streaming down his cheeks. The sky above turned pale blue. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of earth and leaves. The world itself seemed to mourn. He didn't know how long he sat there. But when he finally stood, his face was streaked with mud and tears. He covered Raja's body with broad leaves, then placed small stones around him. That day, the world lost one of the last truly free tigers. But Bayu lost more. He lost a friend, a family, a home. Still, he knew he had to go on. Not for revenge, but to protect what Raja had shown him. Courage, loyalty, and unconditional love. With slow steps, Bayu descended the hill. He left behind memories but carried a promise. He would return to the jungle. He would search for others like Raja if any remained. He would protect them. And he would fight anyone who tried to destroy this forest. Because the jungle was the only place in the world where he had truly been loved. Bayu walked alone down the hill. His feet were wounded, his body weak, his stomach empty since the night before. But his heart burned, not with anger, but with a fire that could no longer be put out. Behind the pain and loss, something began to grow inside him. Strength. Not the strength of muscle or weapons, but a strength of spirit that only those who have lost everything can carry. He returned to the forest, not as a lost child, but as a part of the forest itself. Days passed. Bayu built a shelter from branches and leaves. He learned to filter water from roots. He understood the sound of the wind, the steps of the deer, and the breath of the sky when the rain fell. Everything Raja had once taught him now lived in his blood. But the danger wasn't gone. The forest was still being hunted. Trucks arrived carrying machines. Giant trees were pulled down like they were nothing. Smoke rose from the camps of the illegal loggers. The sound of chainsaws drowned the songs of the birds and the howls of the night animals. Bayu watched from the shadows. He counted the number of workers. He studied their shifts, their routines. He listened in silence to the conversations by the fires. He heard whispers about a big project from the city, and permits signed by powerful hands. But there was one name that froze his blood. Bhuratna, the stepmother who had once thrown him into the jungle. The woman who had destroyed his childhood was now the one leading the destruction of the forest. She hadn't just thrown him away. She had come to burn down the only place where he had felt truly loved. Bayu clenched his fists until his nails dug into his skin. But he would not let her take everything again. That night, Bayu began his quiet war. He sabotaged machines with ropes and traps made from vines and roots. He cut cables using sharpened stones. He spread eerie sounds through the trees, mimicking animal calls to scare the workers. Some men fled in fear. Others whispered rumors of the spirit of the tiger. A few swore they heard a terrible roar echoing through the fog. Bayu wore the fur Raja once shed. He shaped a mask from clay and branches. At night, he moved swiftly from tree to tree like a ghost. He was no longer just a boy. He had become the forest's guardian. But the enemies began to notice. Cameras were installed. Patrols increased. And one night, while Bayu watched from the treetops, he heard something that made his breath stop. Tomorrow morning we'll come in with helicopters. If we have to, we'll burn half the forest. The project must move forward. A voice. There was no doubt. It was Buratna. Bayu almost fell from the tree. Her cold smile returned in his mind. Her sharp voice when she dragged him out of the house all those years ago. Now she was back. Not just to erase his past, but to bury the only place where he had ever belonged. Bayu rushed back to his hiding place, gasping for breath. He knew. Tomorrow would be the turning point. If he didn't act, everything would be gone. That night, Bayu lit a small fire. He looked up at the sky, as if seeking an answer from Raja. I'm sorry I was too late, R.A., he whispered. But this time, I'll protect our home. Even if I have to do it alone. The wind stirred softly. Leaves rustled above him, as if the forest itself answered. And deep within Bayu's heart, he heard a sound. Faint, distant roar. Raja was with him. In the distance, the faint hum of helicopter blades began to echo. The sky turned pale with the coming dawn, and Bayu stood ready. Tomorrow the jungle would witness how a boy once cast aside would become a legend. Bayu stood at the forest's edge as the first light of dawn spread softly. His heart pounded fiercely, knowing today was no ordinary day. The roar of helicopters grew closer, cutting through the fragile morning silence. He slipped quietly among the trees, carrying arrows and small spears made from branches and stones. Simple weapons, but his resolve was steel. This was no ordinary child's fight. It was a battle for life and death. The helicopter landed not far away. A group of uniformed men stepped out, carrying heavy machinery and fuel. They moved eagerly, unaware that someone awaited them with burning determination. Bayu watched from the shadows, noting their every move, occasionally peeking from behind bushes. As he prepared to spring his traps, heavy footsteps approached from behind. Hey! What are you doing here? A loud voice froze Bayu's blood. He turned to see a tall, muscular man with sharp, suspicious eyes. Bayu quickly released an arrow, but the man dodged and charged after him. Fight broke out. Bayu fell several times but did not give up. He ran deeper into the forest with the man chasing him. The air filled with shouts and the crashing of branches. Bayu led the man toward a hidden ravine concealed by thick leaves. Swiftly, he stepped on dry branches that formed a natural trap. The man stumbled and fell into the ravine with a desperate scream. Breathing heavily, Bayu did not stop. He knew this was just the beginning of the battle. Meanwhile, the helicopter took off again, bringing reinforcements. Bayu ran to a large tree and began cutting branches with his spear, creating obstacles to slow the loggers. He gathered stones and threw them at the heavy machines, forcing them to retreat little by little. Night came, but Bayu still held on. With the last of his strength, he lit a small fire to warm himself while thinking about his next move. He knew Buratna would not sit still. The woman would use all her power to destroy the forest and him. Bayu lifted his face toward the star-filled dark sky. I will not give up, R.A. I will protect our home until the end. In the distance, the sound of helicopters faded away. The night forest took over the world. And Bayu prepared for the next fight, shrouded in thick silence. Days passed with growing tension. Bayu kept fighting, hiding, and resisting the increasingly aggressive intruders. But the threat was not only from outside. Within the forest that should have been his refuge, a dark shadow began to appear. One night, as Bayu rested in a small cave, he heard unfamiliar footsteps. From the shadows emerged a young man he did not know. His face looked tired, but his eyes were full of fear. I need help, the man said in a trembling voice. I'm part of their group, but I do not agree with how they are destroying this forest. Bayou hesitated. But there was something in the man's gaze that made him trust him. What is your name? Bayou asked softly. Armin, the man replied. I want to help you stop Buratna and the loggers. Carefully, Bayou accepted Armin into his shelter. Armin began sharing everything about the big plan underway. He explained how Buratna had manipulated some people to secretly help advance the forest destruction project. However, as time passed, Bayou started sensing something strange. The information Armin gave often didn't match reality on the ground. Some traps Bayou set failed because of leaked information. One night, Bayou climbed a tree and saw Armin talking with a uniformed man. Bayou's heart raced. Armin was a traitor. Pain and disappointment overwhelmed Bayou. He had trusted someone who he considered a friend, only to be betrayed. But Bayou knew he had no time to drown in sorrow. The struggle was long and growing harder. He planned a new strategy. Bayou would have to fight not only the loggers but the betrayal from within. That night, Bayou stood alone in the silent forest. The sounds of crickets and wind accompanied his solitude. He whispered softly, I will prove that this forest does not belong to those with power, but to all who love it, including me. Bayou looked up to the sky, gazing at the dim shining stars. In his heart, the flame of courage burned brighter. The journey toward victory was not over. But Bayou was ready to face it all. The sun began to rise, piercing through the thick leaves of the dense forest. Bayou knew today was the decisive day. All the strength and courage he had must be unleashed now, to protect the forest that had become his home and his friend. With a heart full of determination, Bayou organized a small army of forest animals that had been his loyal companions. Raja, the majestic Sumatran tiger, emerged from behind the bushes. His eyes filled with anger and unwavering loyalty. We must stop them before this forest is completely destroyed, Bayou said firmly, yet full of hope. The loggers had entered the deepest part of the forest, carrying heavy machinery and explosives. Buratna led them personally, her face cold and her eyes filled with terrifying ambition. Bayou and Raja planned their attack. They moved silently, using their intimate knowledge of the forest to their advantage. Traps were set at every entrance, branches and roots used to hinder the machine's movements. As the battle began, screams and crashing sounds filled the air. Bayou ran among the trees, jumping and dodging, protecting the trapped animals and fighting the humans destroying his home. In the chaos, Bayou faced Buratna directly. Their eyes met, full of hatred and old wounds yet to be healed. You will never win, bastard child, Buratna shouted with a hoarse voice. Bayou answered calmly but powerfully, I am not a bastard child. I am the protector of this forest. And you have no right to destroy it. The battle between Bayou and Buratna was fierce. But Bayou's strength of heart and Raja's bravery could not be defeated easily. Finally, with great effort, the loggers began to retreat. Their machines were broken, and the garden of hope that Bayou and Raja had built started to grow again. Buratna, defeated and powerless, was taken away by the village authorities. The forest returned to peace, wrapped in the soothing sounds of nature. Bayou sat beneath a large tree, gazing at the clear blue sky. Raja approached and gently touched his shoulder. We did it, R.A. Our forest is safe, Bayou said softly, filled with gratitude. But Bayou knew the struggle was not truly over. Many other threats still lurked beyond. But this time he was no longer alone. He had become a living legend, a forest's friend, and an unstoppable protector. The Sumatran forest still stood tall, thanks to the courage of a boy and a nearly extinct tiger. Dear listeners, the story of Bayu and Raja is more than just an adventure. It carries deep lessons for all of us. It shows us that no matter how dark or difficult life becomes, courage and a pure heart can light the way forward. Bayu's friendship with Raja, a majestic but endangered Sumatran tiger, teaches us that true bonds can transcend all barriers. It reminds us to respect and protect the natural world around us, because our lives are deeply connected with it. The journey also reveals how betrayal and hardship may come from unexpected places, yet with perseverance and trust in what is right, we can overcome even the toughest challenges. Bayu's determination to defend his home and his willingness to forgive and fight for justice inspire us to be strong and compassionate in our own lives. Please remember, this story is fictional. It was created to feel real so that it may motivate, inspire, and provide valuable lessons for anyone who listens. Let this tale be a reminder to never give up, to stand up for what you believe in, and to cherish the friendships in the world around you. Thank you sincerely for listening all the way through. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us where you are listening from and what you think about the story. Your support means the world to us and encourages us to keep bringing more meaningful stories your way.